Among the many announcements from the DC Studios Chapter 1 slate Gods and Monsters was the reveal that DC Studios plans on trying to make video games that may or may not be tied to the DCU. Since we all love a good top 10 list, I put together my own list of 10 different video games that I'd love for DC Studios to make. Before we get started, I encourage you to leave your own top 10 list in the comments down below, along with giving your opinion on this list that I put together. With that being said, let's get started at number 10 on my list of video games that DC Studios should make. Number 10, a DC Universe City Simulator. We all know what it's like to be put into the position of playing as a superhero, having to grind to unlock powers to make our favorite superhero stronger and play better. What if, for once in a lifetime, we were put into the position of a civilian? What if, rather than playing as a superhero, we had to work with DC's iconic roster of superheroes to protect some of the most iconic cities across the DC universe? Imagine a game where each level is based on locations like Gotham City, Metropolis, Central City, or Star City, and we have to do damage control as characters like Commissioner Gordon and Joe West, as villains wreak havoc across the city. Our favorite heroes may very well be superheroes, but they can't be everywhere all of the time, and because of that, we face the hard reality that sometimes they need help too. Who's gonna upgrade the plethora of buildings across the cities in the DC universe to make our favorite superheroes' lives easier? Who's gonna call over the fire department if Joker wreaks havoc across Gotham City as he plants bombs to cause explosions? Who's gonna take care of the civilians while our favorite Justice League members are busy saving the world? For once, we'd be put into that role, and if you ask me, that sounds like one hell of a fun time. Of course, this is inspired by the recent likes of 2 Point Hospital and 2 Point Campus. Number 9, DC's very own Kart Racer game. Kart racers have been on the rise throughout this entire video game generation. Various franchises such as Garfield, Nickelodeon, and even Disney have all tried their hand at making kart racing games for their fans. And honestly, I see no reason why DC Studios shouldn't make this happen for DC fans. A superhero kart racing game with a stacked roster of characters filled with both heroes and villains could absolutely work as long as there's high quality voice acting. This is probably the one scenario where I'd love to specifically see the faces of the new DC universe portray their roles in a game so people can get used to hearing certain actors play certain characters. Now, to make this game not be a carbon copy of Mario Kart, there should be 2 or 3 abilities for each character, like Flash slowing people down, Wonder Woman using her lasso to drag people back, and Batman using his batarang to make a car temporarily stunned. As for the cars or vehicles, Batman has a plethora of Batmobiles to use, Wonder Woman has her invisible plane, Green Lantern could conjure up a vehicle, Flash could run, and Superman could fly. I'm telling you, this game has so much potential with the right ideas, the right developer team, and long-term support based on old iconic shows, movies, or even ongoing shows and movies as well. This is why a DC kart racer could be a banger idea. Number 8, a 3D platformer game starring Krypto the Superdog. Krypto the Superdog has been on a bit of a resurgence as of late. In the last couple of years, he has been featured as a side character in DC's Titans, had a big budget animated movie, and in a licensed on-the-rails shooter tie-in video game. Yes, that's right, if you didn't know, our beloved Superdog recently got a movie tie-in game called DC League of Super Pets: The Adventures of Krypto and Ace, and it was published by Outright Games. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why would DC Studios ever feel the need to greenlight a 3D platformer starring Krypto? My answer to that curiosity is, let's be real. With Krypto the Superdog being on the rise these last few years, DC Studios should try to make him a modern day mascot for DC. A modern-day licensed game where you play as Krypto as you fly around different levels completing different missions that encourage the collectathon type of gameplay that's similar to Spyro or Crash Bandicoot could be a lot of fun. It doesn't even need to be the longest game in the world either. The mid-2000s era of video games, which was filled with a ton of licensed collectathon 3D platformer video games, have become beloved because of their simplicity and because they have replay value. The idea of wanting to replay levels to collect every item or to beat a time level within a certain time to get the highest rank possible, as you do in Sonic Frontiers, is the exact direction DC should take Krypto for his next game. The game could have a ton of different costumes and a ton of different cameos from DC characters, and eventually they could create level packs inspired by ongoing shows or movies as downloadable content. It's a simple yet perfect evolution that doubles down on the potential of Krypto becoming a potential mascot for DC Studios in the gaming space. Number 7, more LEGO DC games, or if we're getting specific, it's time for a LEGO DC's Aquaman game. As a LEGO fan who's played a majority of the LEGO DC games, owns a majority of the LEGO DC sets in real life, and even streams LEGO builds, I'd love to see DC continue its ongoing relationship with LEGO. No, this doesn't mean that their next game has to be on the same tier as LEGO's The Skywalker Saga, though I wouldn't be against DC building toward LEGO DC's Crisis on Infinite Earths. That task seems a bit much though, so that's where my LEGO Aquaman idea comes in. People may not know this, but there is a LEGO Aquaman movie called Aquaman Rage of Atlantis, and there was Aquaman DLC for LEGO's DC supervillains. With how popular Aquaman has become, thanks to Jason Momoa's movie, I think now is the perfect time for an Aquaman game. The core reason I'm proposing a LEGO game, however, is because I think it creatively works in Aquaman's favor. We've seen Aquaman's gameplay Atlantis' visuals and how LEGO would handle switching between Aquaman having to swim and not having to swim in LEGO's DC supervillains. Honestly, it's hard to not see the potential if LEGO made a full-blown, big-budget, high-quality, Uncharted-inspired LEGO game where we get to go on a grand adventure as Aquaman for some sort of ridiculous lost treasure. Yes, I absolutely demand that if this were to happen, LEGO needs to make real-life sets that I can add to my ridiculous ongoing LEGO collection. Number 6, a new Teen Titans video game. In this day and age, ensemble games starring comic book characters have primarily missed more than they've hit. Marvel's Avengers failed, Gotham Knights disappointed a lot of people, and Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League looks like it could also end up being a disappointment as well. Now, what if I said that there was a comic book game with an ensemble cast that most people are nostalgic for? What if I said that there was a game that is the perfect base for a brand new Teen Titans game? Well, not too long ago, Nintendo published DC's Superhero Girls Team Power, which was immediately met with a negative reception because it's a game that was primarily aimed at kids. Now, the game did release, and from what I can tell, it ended up flying under the radar because I see almost nobody talk about it. While that's entirely understandable, here's where my idea comes in. Nintendo should take whatever team developed DC Superhero Girls Team Power and tell them to work on a brand new Teen Titans game. It has been years since we've gotten a game starring the Teen Titans, and because of how much time has flown by, most people barely remember the Teen Titans game on the PS2 and GameCube. We all know why. It's because real ones played Teen Titans Battle Blitz. Yeah, I know. Now that's a deep cut for a lot of people right there. Anyway, the core reason I think that DC Studios should make this happen is that DC Superhero Girls Team Power looks like a fantastic base for a Teen Titans game. In my genuine opinion, not every comic book game needs to be this big budget, AAA, visually gritty, realistic type of video game. We can have and should encourage developers to make mid-tier games like DC Superhero Girls. Just from the trailers and footage that's out there, you can tell that this game nailed the comic book visual art style. The beat 'em up gameplay in this game is right in line with what should be done for a Teen Titans game, considering the previous Teen Titans game was made in the same style. The only changes they need to work on are making this writing as good as possible so the game can target a slightly older audience, adding social elements that encourage the players to play as different Teen Titans, and ensuring that there's some sort of post-game content that's worth playing. If they do this, it's a recipe for success. I just hope that Nintendo knows who to call when there's trouble so they can make this game happen. Number 5, a Super Sons game. A big budget action adventure game with optional online co-op that allows you to play as Damian or John is something that could be incredibly fun. Like most people, I too want a Superman game, but there are so many obstacles that a Superman game would have to overcome to be great that I can't help but think that a Super Sons game could be the answer to this ever-growing demand. For instance, a big part of John's growth to becoming Superboy is that his powers happen to appear over time. He isn't immediately overpowered, or at least as powerful as Superman, and that could translate perfectly in the video game world. Rather than being gifted with his powers immediately, the idea of having to progress through the story for John to get certain powers or abilities would be entirely understandable with Superboy. It would make far more sense to the player, and it would make the late game content even more enjoyable because unlocking abilities as we go would only make the gameplay more satisfying. Along with that, I think it would also add a sense of believability to failing a mission, taking damage, or even dying when playing as John, unlike with Superman, where it's hard to believe that he could die or that his health bar could drop because he's Superman. The only way that works is if every enemy has kryptonite enhanced weapons. Now, on the Damian side of things, I also do think it may be even easier to nail Damian's gameplay style and abilities if a strong group of developers took inspiration from previous Batman related games. That's really not that much of a concern to me. As for who you would play as in the game, I think the ability to choose whether you want to play as Damian or John could add a sense of fun to the game as well. It opens the door to optional online co-op with your friends or strangers as you play through the game together. Now, if you don't play the game with someone, I think it's fair to say that the other character would simply be an AI that completes missions with us, of course. As for how they could incentivize us to play as both characters, which would require us to play this hypothetical game twice, they could maybe hide a post-credit scene that requires playing the game twice. Like I said earlier, there's a lot of potential with the Super Sons game, and it's an idea that could finally allow us to get the closest thing to a modern-day Superman game while also appealing to Batman fans. Damian and John are incredibly likable characters with a genuinely amazing chemistry that only gets better as they spend time together, as seen in the comics and the Super Sons movie that was recently released. Plus, there's a big potential for cameos across this hypothetical game, including Superman, Batman, and even the Teen Titans as well. Number 4, The Flash by Telltale Games. For years, I and many other DC fans have wanted a game starring the Flash. However, the harsh reality is that in this modern day of gaming, it feels like a AAA video game starring the Flash is mission impossible for a multitude of reasons. However, we already know that there is a demand for a Flash game, and that at its peak, a well-written story starring the Flash is wildly compelling thanks to the CW. That's where we bring in Telltale Games. You know, the same team that has already worked with DC on 2 beloved games, Batman the Telltale series and Batman the Enemy Within. A choose-your-own-adventure game centered around the Flash having to make decisions that end up affecting the timeline or multiverse as a whole has an insane amount of potential. The choices mattering and affecting the timeline would make total sense. The quick-timed events that require us to press buttons or move our analog sticks on the controllers could legitimately be sick. And more importantly, there could be far more than just 2 specific outcomes for the story, considering it's the Flash. which would allow for a ton of creativity from the developers or story writers. To me, this is one of the only few ways that a game starring the Flash could be viable in this day and age, so it needs to absolutely happen one way or another. And if it's done right, a game starring the Flash made by Telltale Games would also finally be the answer to the never-ending curiosity of how do game developers balance the Flash using super speed. Now run, Barry, run. I need you to change the timeline to make this happen. Number 3, it's time for DC to make its own version of Marvel Ultimate Alliance. After growing up with Marvel Ultimate Alliance 1 and 2, along with playing Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3 on the Nintendo Switch, I can confidently say that DC fans deserve a Justice League Ultimate Alliance game. Despite the lackluster AIs in Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3, MOA 3 was an absolute blast. MOA 3 felt like a game that was made by Marvel fans, for Marvel fans. It understood what people adored about the MCU. The comic book visual art style was an absolute delight. The voice acting was pretty damn good. And most importantly, the game was fun to play. I love that MOA 3 encouraged us to make our own teams, and I love that a curiosity regarding team formations was, more often than not, rewarded by team synergy bonuses. A game that's done in this same fashion, starring some of DC's most iconic characters, could absolutely work, and there is no reason for it to not be a thing by now. A stacked roster filled with some of DC's most iconic characters that are voice acted by some of DC's most iconic voice actors and actresses would absolutely be amazing. I won't even push it by asking for long-term support, a ton of downloadable content, and for it to be voice acted by the upcoming actors or actresses cast by DC Studios. I simply want a game on the scale of MOA 3 done by DC that has a competent story, a fantastic roster of characters, post-game content worth playing, and the characters to be voiced from the plethora of voice actors and actresses from the DC animated universe. If DC made that happen, which we all know they should and could make it happen, I'd be incredibly happy, considering it'd be an absolute home run with the DC fandom. Number 2, DC Universe Online 2. Well, DCUO has managed to reach its 12th anniversary and somehow managed to outlive a multitude of games such as Marvel's Avengers. It's time for the next generation of DC Universe Online. There is absolutely no reason for this to not be in the works already. Yes, DCUO has a fairly dedicated player base, but let's be real, no one is really thinking about joining DCUO today. The graphics are horribly outdated, the combat needs a massive overhaul, the game is still pay to win according to a lot of the players, and there is only one way to continue with DCUO, building its successor from the ground up. No one can say the demand isn't there, considering DCUO is still getting updates, new cosmetics, and timely placed episodic content, such as the Black Adam episode for Black Adam's release. Plus, DCUO has somehow managed to outlive nearly every single rival it possibly had all these years later. I think we can all agree that after DCUO makes its way to Xbox Series X and PS5 consoles, it's time for WB to fund the next generation of DC Universe Online. And finally, number 1. As this absolutely should be, DC Studios needs to greenlight a Green Arrow game, and since this is number 1 on my list, I have 2 developers chosen for this potential game. The first option is the one and only Rocksteady Studios. Picture it now, Green Arrow fans. Rocksteady Studios makes their Oliver Queen version of Arkham Asylum. We start off the potential Green Arrow trilogy, experiencing the very origin story we've all become far too familiar with thanks to the CW. The game builds towards the grand finale of Oliver Queen and Deathstroke's final face-off. Now, the second developer makes a little bit more sense if you ask me. Monolith Productions. While a lot of people may have forgotten that Monolith is already working on a Wonder Woman game, it's hard to not see the potential in a Green Arrow game by these same developers. The Nemesis system almost feels tailored for the comic book universe, and rather than them spending time on making a massive Batman game, Green Arrow just makes sense after Wonder Woman. They'd be able to mix up the combat between hand-to-hand combat and the bow and arrow, just like they're currently doing with Wonder Woman's lasso, shield, and sword. They'd also be able to take inspiration from Arkham City and Arkham Knight, so we get to run around or zip around Star City, taking down big and small-scaled bosses to make our way through the Nemesis system. On paper, it just makes sense. No, I'm not asking Monolith Productions to build a fully fleshed out video game universe starring DC characters. I'm more so asking for them to continue making my dreams come true after they hopefully achieve greatness with their Wonder Woman game. If not, Monolith Productions, you have failed this city. And that just about does it for my top 10 video games that DC Studios should make list. Did I miss an idea that you were hoping to see on this list? Did I hit the nail on the head with some of my ideas? What video games would you like to see from DC Studios in the future? I'd love for fellow DC fans that are excited about the upcoming future of DC Studios to give their input in the comments down below.